Hi, my name is Missy Owen, and I'm a BCBA here at Puzzlebox Academy at our Palm Bay location. So the topic of today's training is going to be personal safety. So to start off with, what is personal safety? So it is the general recognition and avoidance of possible harmful situations or persons in your surrounding. So as we know, with everything going on right now, it is good for everyone in general, not just our students, to be very aware of their surroundings, the situations kind of going on around them, and also recognize how prepared are you to be in one of those dangerous situations. Because you definitely want to be as prepared as possible these days, whether it's hanging out at home with your friends and family, it could be going to the park to play at the playground, walking your dog down the street, even attending a concert or walking on the beach. And so keep in mind too that this is a struggle for everyone in general, let alone our students who already have pre-existing issues that makes this an even harder skill for them to grasp. And so I do want to mention too that this is going to include some online and social media safety, because as we know, our kiddos, they love the iPads, they love those electronics, and as they get older, they get into more social media, more online gaming, so you get into those chat rooms, get into some blogs. Anything can happen. So we definitely want to make sure that our kiddos have at least a general knowledge of basic safe and unsafe things to do when online and on that social media safety. And something to always kind of keep in the back of your mind is that when our students leave Puzzlebox Academy, they're going into high school. So whether that's a public school, a charter school, homeschooling, a different option, that is the age level that they're at. And as you know, if you guys can remember back to high school, I mean, it's persons with intellectual disabilities, which autism is included in that, are 7 times more likely to be sexually assaulted than persons without an intellectual disability. Please keep in mind, persons that includes children, teenagers, and adults. Another one is that 16 to 25% of persons with autism have been sexually abused. And please keep in mind too that these are only the reported cases. So it's safe to assume that these are underestimations of the true numbers actually out there. So the question is, why are these so underreported? Why do we underestimate these so much? Multiple reasons for that, with one of them being the same reason why other sexual assault and abuse cases get unreported, and that it's embarrassing to talk about. It makes you relive the situation that you just want to forget and move on from. People don't believe you, and that just makes the whole thing seem even worse. And also, you don't want people to be mad at you, because inadvertently, someone is going to be angry at you when you report something like that. And also the process, it's scary, it's unknown, it's uncomfortable. You have to tell the same thing time and time again. Essentially the expression beating a horse to death definitely takes into play here, and that is just no one wants to go through that, let alone our kiddos, who it just is so much harder for them to try and deal with something like that. Also, reporting events like this, especially if it occurred in the past, like not within the recent past, but maybe a couple weeks or months previously, is that our students are then expected to remember something in detail that happened to them months ago. They're going to have to retell the same thing time and time again with the expectation that the story doesn't change from time to time that they tell it. Especially as we know, our kiddos can be very susceptible to if someone kind of gives them a leading question or tries to lure them into saying something. And because a lot of our kiddos too, they don't want anyone to be mad at them. They want to please others. And so they know if they say the right thing, then, oh, this person is no longer going to be mad at me. They might just say it, even though it's not true, just for the sake of how the other person feels. And there's also a lot of evidence out there that if these cases, when they actually do get brought to trial, which is hard enough to begin with because they have very low success rates, so lawyers don't often want to take these cases, that the persons with disabilities break down on the stands. Kind of as I mentioned previously, so it's just a very traumatic event from the initial occurrence of whatever it was through the trial, court cases, and moving on from that. And given the high rates of abuse of this population as well, there is surprisingly little research out there about evidence-based school-wide practices or ways of teaching this population how to avoid being in these situations. Because like we know, this is one of the things that we have to teach our kids how to avoid it, because once you're in it, you're in it, but how to recognize the signs of it and avoid these situations altogether, so that way that's something that they would never have to experience. Another statistic is that children with autism are twice as likely to be physically and or sexually abused as their ASD peers. And there are several reasons for why this is a statistic and for why it's understandable why this is the case. So a lot of our students, they have issues with communication. And so step one is going to be to reporting that this event happened. And as I said in the previous slide, a lot of our kids have issues reporting events that happened maybe 5 minutes previously, let alone such a traumatic event that they may just want to forget and try to remove from their memory. And with these too, there has to be details with the communication. They can't just say like, oh, someone hurt me. They have to tell who it was, where it was, when it was, how long it was, and all these other details that are just so high of expectations. Another reason why is that our kiddos have they struggle with social cues, as we know, core deficit of autism. So a lot of the time, our kiddos have difficulties understanding appropriate versus inappropriate social cues, touches to begin with. So if they get put in one of these situations where there's a predator around, that predator can easily pick up on their inability to kind of distinguish, oh, is it okay for my friend to give me a high five? Is it okay for my teacher to touch my shoulder quick to get my attention? Kind of what is that good touch versus bad touch? To recognize that and then also discriminate that between who the person is and how well that the individual knows that other person. Also, our students typically have a lot more adults in their life than the normal student would. For example, like here at Puzzlebox, we have the low teacher-student ratios. So in most classrooms, there are 2 to 3 adults in there at all times. And keep in mind, this is not just our school, but all with the whole autism population. There's just a lot more adults, there's more aides, there's more assistants. A lot of our kids, they have OT, they have ABA therapists, they have speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, they may even have psychological help. So they're just exposed and put into these one-on-one situations with a lot more adults than maybe their typically developing peers, which just presents that much more opportunity for this abuse to occur. And also a lot of our kiddos as well, they need help with those daily living and self-care routines, such as bathrooming. I mean, that's going to be one of the main ones right there. A lot of our kids need help in the bathroom, whether it's to use it, to wipe, to be told to go in there, to change their clothes, to wash their hands, to do all those things that if a perpetrator did want to take advantage, that would be a prime opportunity to do that. And one last statistic that I wanted to talk about was that persons with intellectual disabilities are more likely to be assaulted by someone that they know than someone that they don't know. So 86% of the time, the victim knew who their attacker was, versus with the non-intellectually disabled population is only 76% of the time. So 86% of the time, our population, they're going to know who the person was who attacked them. It's most likely someone they were supposed to trust, who that they were told they could rely on, someone who had power and control over their life. Something that we do a lot is that we teach our kiddos, all kids in general, but especially our students, is that they have to listen to what their parents say, to what their teachers say, to what their therapists say, to what their coach says, to what adults in general tell them to do. But 86% of the time, it's going to be one of those people, if abuse does occur, who is the one abusing them. And so another thing that we do a lot in school, which happens across all schools, not just ours specifically, and with our population, is that we tell students, oh, not a choice. So let's say we're sitting in the classroom, it's time to do a writing assignment, we put it on the desk. The student's like, no, thank you, I don't want to do this. And we tell them, oh, not a choice. First do your work, and then you can have a break. Student does the work, they get a break, that gets reinforced, we move on to the next thing, which in the scope of learning and growing and developing and gaining important life skills, it's needed to teach. But at the same time, it's also teaching our kiddos that when they say no, it doesn't have to be honored. Which obviously is a big issue. We don't want that to be the end goal. And so in a situation like that could easily generalize into our students being abused. That adult does something to them they don't like, they say no, the adult says not a choice and keeps doing it. So how do we prevent that? How do we stop that? And the way to do this is by teaching this personal safety stuff that we want to teach to our kiddos. And so this next couple of slides are going to go over the overall focus of what we're picturing this personal safety to look like. So to start with, just some basic facts and hygiene. So with this, a big focus is going to be to get our students as independent in the bathroom as possible, because that's just one of those prime zones for abuse. So get them independent with going to the bathroom, with dressing themselves, with bathing themselves, even something simple as washing hands and brushing teeth. The less likely it is that another adult would have to be in the bathroom with them, the better off the student is. Another part of this as well is to learn the accurate names of body parts. Because when it comes down to it, the kiddos have to use these technical terms. They have to tell us what happened and not use some silly little made up word that they know what it means. Their parents know, staff knows, friends may know, but it's not going to hold up anywhere. So that would definitely be something we want to focus on. And then also some basic just physical and social safety, such as if you're using a public bathroom, make sure you lock the door. That's, like I said, bathroom is one of those prime things that we just want these kids to be independent as possible in there and to know the safety too. Lock the door, don't let anyone in there, kind of just keep your eyes on you. Another thing that we'll be focusing on is the whole good touch versus bad touch, which is hard because, like I said with our kiddos before, to teach them, oftentimes we need to physically prompt them through things, whether it be handwriting, tracing, dressing, all these different life skills. We sometimes do have to put hands on our kids to effectively teach them. And so how are they supposed to be able to discriminate what's a good touch versus a bad touch? And then to distinguish, like, okay, so it's okay if my therapist touches me like that, but if a stranger did that, that would be one thing, versus my friend did that, that's okay, or if my parent did that. And so to kind of teach all these different good touch, bad touch, in general, that some things just, if this happens, no, always a bad touch. If this happens, oh, this is what you do. And another thing we'll be focusing on is nonverbal behavior of others. As we know, a lot of our kids struggle with picking up on that nonverbal behavior of others, kind of like the side eye or someone looking. So some examples of this include, like if our kiddo is playing outside, might have two kids playing outside, playing tag, and they notice a car drives past slowly 5 times. Most kids would know that that's something, hey, that is not a good situation, something seems unsafe, go inside and report it, versus some of our kiddos, we need to teach them to realize that that is something that's bad. Another example could be if you're walking your dog down the street and someone is following you. You know, it's the same person always seems to follow you at the same time. Those are the type of things that need to be reported that might be unsafe. Versus if you're out walking your dog and your neighbor's outside playing and says hi to you, that's one thing. Another thing we'll be focusing on, I've touched on this kind of previously, is reporting these dangerous or unsafe events. So this is one's going to have multiple layers to it. So can they know what, first of all, can they even distinguish what is a safe versus an unsafe event? What's a dangerous versus an undangerous event? And then also teach them who to tell. So if you see a car accident happen, that's something you want to report. If you see a frog jumping across the street and that gets ran over, that's not something to report. If someone sends you a weird message on Minecraft, that is something to report. If you see your friend at Publix and say hi to them, that's not something to report. So kind of teach our kiddos what should be reported, what should not be reported, with an underlying theme that if you do not know, you report it. And to give them the safe people who they can report, always your parents you can talk to, give them a safe teacher to talk to, and all of that so they can feel like someone has their back. Also, something that we want to focus on is personal space. So you know, a lot of our students struggle with this. They either want nothing to do with anyone or they want to sit in everyone's lap and cuddle all day long. And so to teach our kiddos about personal space and kind of within different relationships, that you'd have different bubbles of personal space based on the situation and the people around you. Another thing we'll be focusing on is reporting basic body sensations. So hungry, thirsty, hot, cold, pain, if you feel fine. That just kind of gets into more of those details with reporting events. And that way, if something does occur, the kiddo is able to tell us how they feel. Some other things we'll be focusing on is going to be understanding relationships and kind of what is appropriate and inappropriate behaviors for different types of relationships. So it may be appropriate for you to sit on your parent's lap, to cuddle up with your parent when you're watching a movie at home, but would be inappropriate to cuddle up with a stranger if you're on a public bus. Kind of all these different situations, and also what to expect. that if you're calling someone like your boyfriend, your girlfriend, you have one set of expectations versus if you're calling someone just your friend, that's those set of expectations versus a peer in your classroom who you see every day but you may not hang out with, that's an acquaintance and a stranger, and it's all those different relationships. Another thing we'll be focusing on are going to be these private versus public behaviors. Especially as our kids get older, we know it happens to everyone, they're going to hit puberty. So to try and teach them before it happens, kind of there's things okay to do in public, there's things okay to do in private. There are things that are never okay to do in public, have to be done in private. To really teach our kiddos these socially significant behaviors, because like I said at the start of this presentation, when they leave here, they're going to high school. And we all know there's a lot of public behaviors that you just cannot do in a high school or a public setting. It will immediately get you flagged and ostracized, may even have potential legal consequences at that point as well. Another thing we'll be focusing on that internet and social media safety. So just kind of the basics of not giving out your password, make sure your password's protected, keep different passwords for different websites, make sure you write them down so you can remember them. Don't give out your personal information or credit card info. I once had a client when I was working over in Tallahassee who was playing on Roblox with just some random kid, didn't know who he was. The friend gave him free Roblox for like $5 and asked in return if he could give him money back. My client didn't have anything, and so then the other person was trying to get him to go into his parents' purse, get out their credit card, and give him the credit card info so that way he could buy it himself. Luckily, in this situation, the parents caught the kid in the act. They stopped it, but that's one of those little things that if you turn your back for 5 minutes, it's very easy for your kiddo to go in there, grab out your card, give out their information to a stranger without even realizing the significance of doing that. Another thing with all this social media and gaming, how to message others. As we know, message boards, anyone can access them, anyone can say anything. So to teach our kiddos to kind of recognize like, hey, these are never okay things for anyone to say to you. These are things that you should never say to anyone. These are things that are okay to say, and these are things that are okay for others to say. And to also teach them back to the reporting that if someone says certain things to you, you need to report this to your parent or teacher or someone else. And then also with the funds of posting online, especially as I said before, the kids get older, they have social media accounts, there's Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, kids taking pictures and dancing. And unfortunately, the more outrageous ones, call it outrageous, tend to get more views, more likes, it gets reinforced. So our kiddos, if they want to get a lot of likes, they just have to look up some videos and kind of see, oh, that person did this, they got a lot of likes, so I'm going to try doing that. And to teach our kiddos, there are some things that are okay to post, some things that you should never post, and really hone in on them that once you post it, it never goes away. Even if you delete it, there are still ways to bring it up. If someone else saw it, they took a screenshot of it, it doesn't matter if you delete it at that point, it's out there. And then lastly, too, to get into the whole process of puberty. So this, we would kind of focus on it for the older students, ones who this would actually be affecting them within the next couple of years, or it could already be affecting them. And with this, it's awkward enough for everyone, so we're definitely splitting up the genders. We'd have the same gender teachers teaching those things. Just to teach these kiddos about the whole process of it. It's going to be new, it's scary, it's weird, it's awkward. No one likes talking about it, but we have to, because like I said previously, if we don't do it here, the kiddos are not going to learn these things. And unfortunately, the way most kids, if we don't teach them, they're going to find out about it online. Don't even want to get into how weird and strange and just inappropriate and unsafe all of that would be if we start having our kiddos look up process of puberty online and just kind of going at that themselves. So we want to make sure that we teach them the right things, teach them how and the appropriate ways of handling these things. So why is this important? So this is a quote that I had found from an NPR article that went over all of these statistics. And so that says that they are people, this is talking about intellectually disabled population, they are people who often cannot speak or their speech is not well developed. They are generally taught from childhood to be compliant, to obey, to go along with people. Because of that intellectual disability, people tend not to believe them, to think they are not credible or that what they are saying, they are making up or imagining. And so for all these reasons, a perpetrator sees an opportunity, a safe opportunity to victimize people. This quote, I feel like gets right to the heart of it, that our kiddos are essentially groomed in a way to be victims. And so we need to stop that process and make sure that these kids can advocate for themselves, stand up for themselves, realize what is a dangerous situation or unsafe, and get out of there. And who to tell about so that way it does not occur again. So there's some other facts. Sex education is not mandatory for schools in Florida. So it is very likely that once the kiddos leave Puzzle Box Academy, they will not have the opportunity to be taught these things. So that being said, in some public schools, they do teach about this stuff. They have the health and safety. A lot of that is done in middle school. When our kids leave here, they're high school. So it's just something that we need to teach it. Like I said, if we don't teach it to them, they're going to find out either from other students, and we know that's either going to be truthful or not truthful, or they're going to try and figure out themselves on the internet, which no one wants that. Another reason why this is important is that children with autism struggle at identifying deception in others, both verbal and nonverbal deception, and also at that kind of referential communication. So essentially giving the listener enough info so that they know what the speaker is referring to. So all this boils down to is that our kiddos, like I said previously, are not that good at picking up on nonverbal, even sometimes verbal behaviors, but especially deception, where the adult is intentionally telling them the wrong thing, and we expect them to realize that and then do the opposite in a way. It's a hard skill for a lot of adults. I know I'm terrible at telling when people are lying to me. I tend to be gullible about stuff. We want to make sure that our kiddos have these skill sets and that we set them up for success when they do leave us. And so something that we will be doing here at Puzzle Box to make sure all staff are well aware of this is that we're going to be doing some trainings. So I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but as an employee, we are all a mandated reporter. And so at our next professional development day, which is where we're closed for the day, we just have staff come in, we do trainings. So something that we'll be talking about is kind of what entails being a mandated reporter, review the laws for that, how to report something, recognizing signs of abuse or neglect, and how to move that process forward. Another issue with this is that the signs of abuse typically overlap with behaviors our students are known to engage in. So a lot of times if a child is abused or neglected, they will act out and engage in these inappropriate behaviors, which as you know, our students have a lot of those. So how do we distinguish between just another day basic behavior and a behavior that's occurring as a result of this potentially traumatic event? So one way to do that is, luckily we have, like I said, I'm a BCBA, we stick to the ABA principles. So we look at what is the function of this behavior. Also, what is the environment that this behavior occurs? Is it after a typical time of day? Is it maybe always on the weekend? Coming back from the weekend or maybe going to the weekend? Is it when a certain person walks past and we see these behaviors? So these are all things that are taken into account when we do see these behaviors. And definitely too, if something novel occurs, that always makes us really look in and question things even further. So hopefully we would catch these things. But like I said, we'll be doing a lot of staff trainings on this. So that way everyone here is prepared, and we would be more than happy to pass along anything to parents as well. And just some different teaching methods that we'll be focusing on. So we'll be using some modeling, some social stories, with those are just kind of brief written little stories, keep them very simple, to the point, that outline various situations. Some role playing, so we'll be acting out these situations, so that way we want to make sure that the kiddos, they can verbally tell us what to do. We know it's very much one thing from saying you'll do something, and then in the moment, what do you do? So we want to try and get as much of those in the moment situations as possible, obviously maintaining safety, dignity, and all of that, but to make sure that our students are prepared and that they know what to do. Another one's going to be behavior skills training. So that's a lot of just going over the rules, rehearsing it, modeling it, and get feedback. So that way you know what you did wrong, then practice again and keep practicing until you get it. Another ones are task analyses. So these are what we use to break down bigger kind of behaviors into small little steps. So let's take like the big behavior of reporting. To just sort of break that down to little steps, you have to be able to observe to and attend to what happened. You have to then be able to remember what happened, retain that information, go and find someone to tell them the situation accurately with detail enough so that they understand exactly what happened. there's a lot of steps into that behavior to try and make the point get across. And so also have the basic shaping, prompting, chaining techniques that we can always utilize, some direct instruction, which we do that a lot throughout the day with the Morningside model, and then also video modeling. Because a lot of this, there are videos out there that we can always make them ourselves to teach our students how to respond to these things and what some situations may look like. And so that is about the end of our presentation. I did want to let you guys know, though, that before we teach this to any students at Puzzlebox, that we will be sending out a parent permission slip for all the parents here to sign off on, that they do give us permission to teach this to your to your child. And part of that is watching this presentation. And if you have any questions or concerns about anything, definitely reach out. It's here at Puzzlebox Academy. And like I said, be on the lookout for a permission slip being sent home, and any questions or concerns will be addressed at that time. Thank you guys. Have a good night.